recht tegenover ons aan het Prins Bernhardplein te Amsterdam zit een van de grootste trustkantoren ter wereld, namelijk Intertrust. En daar kijken wij dagelijks op uit.
En wat gebeurt daar dan?
Daar worden dus alle brievenbusvennootschappen beheerd.
Maar welke bedrijven zitten daar bijvoorbeeld?
BBC, hè?
Ja.
BBC World zit hier. Gazprom.
Ja.
Gazprom zit hier ook. Maar als je bijvoorbeeld kijkt naar de Kamer van Koophandel, je typt bijvoorbeeld dit adres uit, dan zie je dan waarschijnlijk 2000 firmanamen.
2000.
Ja.
Heb je dat gedaan?
Ja. Maar ze zijn tot nu toe niet erg op journalisten. Ook collega's van ons, er zijn er weinig die, volgens mij is nog niemand van ons binnen geweest daar.
Nee, klopt.
Hebben jullie wel eens aangebeld?
Ja, ik heb wel eens gebeld, ja. En toen heb ik gevraagd of ze me door wilden verbinden met de persvoorlichting. En dat wilden ze niet. Toen heb ik gevraagd, hebben jullie dan? Jawel. Maar verder dan de receptie ben ik nooit gekomen.
How can this offshore world exist? Who maintains it? Who keeps it all running and makes sure that the inhabitants get the best advice? Who builds the financial structure and monitors the capital flows? To answer that question, we take you to the English countryside.
There is a whole world out there of people who are letting tax havens operate. They are really three types of people. There are bankers, there are lawyers, and there are accountants. Together, we have called them the pinstripe mafia. Why? Well, because they look remarkably like me. They are probably grey-haired at the top of the tree. They are white, they are probably male, and they are professionally qualified. They probably speak English, and they quite possibly went to a British university. Most of them will be foreigners to those places. If tax havens are going to be used by wealthy people, and if it's going to be used by multinational companies, then they need to be serviced by familiar advisors. And the familiar advisors are always going to be the big four firms of accountants: PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Ernst & Young, Deloitte. They are the constant feature of every tax haven, in fact. Without one of those firms, or maybe all of those firms being present, you really will not have a tax haven. But you'll find all the familiar
names. What are those accounting companies supporting for this company?
They're advising these companies how to flow their money in order to make use of all these tax havens and these tax advantages without breaking.
This is kind of one-shot consulting, but why?
Not one shot.
They keep contact with all the way around.
What? This is not one shot, not at all. They make sure, because these provisions always change and the laws always change, so they always need to. They are constantly advising companies on how to best allocate their taxes in order to make use of a tax break here or a tax break there, or move from one tax haven to another in order to actually optimize.
Well, those accounting companies are supporting for bad things, right?
Well, so that's the thing. It is legal, Muno-san. It is legal. It's not illegal. But of course it's bad, but it's still legal. So this is a moral question versus a legal question. Yes, it's bad.
My curiosity is every country's tax office, they want to get tax from them, right? But why they can't do that? You said, well, it's French government, they did.
You know, it's like the prisoner's dilemma. So basically, right? Because like if everybody would get together and say, okay, let's stop this, we would be able to do it. But the reality is that some countries will think, well, if I am going to create this tax haven, all this economic activity will come to my country, and everything will go through my place, and I might even be able to leverage some tax. And if I can get a big chunk of the market, that would be enormous for my people. So this, to create a universal treaty that will outlaw tax havens, is almost impossible, because every country will feel that, okay, you know what, if maybe we should, if I don't know, maybe Somalia, they will think up of a way that if we have this global treaty and they say, well, but our people are poor and I need to support them, why don't I create a tax haven and bring in some money that's flowing over here, and he will get a lot of public support for that, might win the election.
That makes sense.
The banks, whether they are British or they are Dutch.
Somalia is Somalians.
Well, they just need to set up a
okay, for example, Japan. For Japan, Somalia, Zambia, whatever they're talking about, but the transaction happening in Japan, Japanese government going to decide to charge tax for them.
Yeah, that's the VAT, but the profit depends on where the headquarters is based, no?
Yeah, but change system.
Yeah, but no, if my headquarters is located in Somalia, then I need to pay tax in Somalia, not in Japan, of the profit that I make over my sales.
So French government, what they're going to do?
That's in the next video. Let's see that first.
Okay, let's continue.
Sure, they are French, sure they are US, so Citigroup will be virtually everywhere. Deutsche will be virtually everywhere. So consistently the same accountants, consistently the same banks, and always lawyers to support them. Without those three things, you can't really have a tax haven. The language that is used offshore is very careful. So we will find tax minimization. We will find neutral taxation. I love the phrase that we're looking for neutral taxation. It actually means no tax, by the way. So neutral tax means no tax, but we couldn't say no tax because that seems, well, a little unseemly, doesn't it? You know, that's, how can we not pay tax? So we call it neutral. We will talk about tax optimization. Well, tax optimization means no tax again. Let's be clear, that's what it means. But all of this jargon is designed to make everybody feel comfortable, as though they are managing an environment and making choices that are legitimate and proper. Actually, they're trying to get round the law. But of course, that's the last thing that anybody will say.
The lawyers, bankers, accountants and millionaires don't seem to belong anywhere, but they are constantly on the move between their various investments in real estate, always sheltered and pleasantly located in a world that is not limited to London, New York or Monaco. Which then are these centres, zones and islands that the inhabitants of the offshore world move around in, and what do they actually look like?
The zone becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. It can't be stopped, a kind of self-perpetuating agent of extra-state territory. And the free zones are facilitating capital movements because... And the free zones are facilitating capital movements because they provide incentives that help you shelter some of the taxes and allow you to own property, allow you to have cheap labor, and the laws for each of these zones are different. For instance, in Dubai Media City, there's free speech, because ABC and NBC and all of you they're headquartered there. So you can say things which you can't say right outside the gate. The world is kind of addicted to the incentives that go with the zone. So now everything is...
Why are those cities coming here?
So even cities have like free zones.
What free zone mean?
Free zone means that they create a special zone. If you set up a company over there, you get
the
special
same as Cayman Island?
Yeah, but then within a country.
Okay.
zone. And it's meant to make into the zone a place where a corporate family would see a home there.
But let's look at a less exotic location. Here, for example, at the next stop on our global tax-free tour. Bishop's Avenue in London, once called Millionaires Row, it has recently been renamed Billionaires Row.
It's an internal world going on. It's a sort of world in itself. It's an inside, secret kind of realm.
So, if I would be a billionaire and I don't want to pay tax, what do I do?
If you're a billionaire, you don't have any contact with money at all. You may have some special issue black credit card that you can only use in an ATM in Monaco or something. But what you do is rather like the way that the criminal erases his traces. You make yourself invisible. You don't have any contact with money. This is all happening behind the scenes. Nothing has got your name on it. Yeah? You just deal with cash. You don't need to spend any money. You don't have come any contact with it at all.
But if I want to buy my Ferrari?
You want to buy your Ferrari? Well, I don't think you're going to be doing it yourself. You're going to be going to a leasing company that's in Cayman Islands and who are going to be organising for you. When you wake up in the morning, it's probably just outside your house. I mean, you want to disappear. If you want to, this is what you have to become almost invisible. And this is the way that you can protect yourself and keep.
It means those billionaires owning Facebook or Amazon, those company owner, they can conceal money.
So, like for example, what Putin apparently is doing, he's basically he doesn't own any money. It's completely invisible. But actually, it's estimated that he's extremely rich. But nothing is directly related to him because he doesn't spend anything. He has people around him who make purchases, or he doesn't buy anything. He leases things, so he doesn't own it. So basically, financially, he almost doesn't exist because everything that he needs in terms of money is either comes in cash or is being bought for him through strawmen, so people who support him, who actually buy things for him, while he doesn't seem to buy anything. So the money doesn't.
Why Putin is rich?
Well, because he's a very powerful man, and in Russia, a lot of money. That's worth a lot.
Like a tsari.
Yes.
But he doesn't own his company, right?
No, but he's very rich and he can make and break companies, and there are a lot of people. There's a lot of mafia who very few hands who control a lot of the natural resources that are actually Russians, do not belong to these mafia. So it's estimated that he has a lot of money.
The financial police or the tax man or the media off your back. You become a sort of non-person. You become this offshore ghostly spirit, rather like Hamlet's father.
This is an incredibly concentrated industry. 0.14% of the world's population, less than 10 million people, control about 95% of the offshore private wealth. They're citizens of nowhere. In the interests of this underlying group at the very top of the global economic order that has come to have more influence than ever in the last 20 years under the impact of globalization. Their interests, I think, are fundamentally at odds with the interests of the rest of us in shared tax institutions, in shared bank regulation institutions across borders. They've been able to game this nation-state system for their own purposes.
But do the same laws and regulations apply to this financial shadow world as to our world, in which the tax form drops through the letterbox on a regular basis? To find out, our tour takes us to Eva Joly. When she was a judge, she led the successful investigation into a French corruption scandal. Her life was repeatedly threatened. Now an EU parliamentarian, she's investigating the effects of the 1 trillion euros, that's 1,000 billion, in tax revenue that the EU annually misses out on.
La question de savoir si c'est légal ou pas légal, ce n'est pas suffisant parce qu'il y a toute la notion d'abus de droit et l'utilisation intensive faite par les multinationales des paradis fiscaux à l'apparence de la légalité, mais dans beaucoup de cas, en réalité, s'il y avait une enquête et si les services fiscaux étaient outillés pour chercher vraiment, on s'apercevrait qu'ils tomberont sous la notion d'abus de droit, donc ça serait illégal. Et c'est là où on voit le cœur du mécanisme qui consiste à transférer ce qui aurait dû être des ressources publiques du monde entier, mais essentiellement des pays en voie de développement, vers des actionnaires privés. C'est le colonialisme poursuivi par d'autres moyens.
So exactly this is what you were mentioning, Kimoto-san. Basically, this whole system it actually takes away the tax revenue from countries in developing nations like Nigeria, and puts it in the hands of the shareholders of companies like Shell. It's neo-colonialism.
Neo-colonialism. New type.
Yeah.
The tour takes us to Kenya to see what the consequences of the financial shadow world are for the African continent. We meet Johannes Chiminia and his colleagues, who are investigating the way the multinationals active in Africa structure their accounts so as to pay as little tax as possible.
Basic registration of the company. We have one employee in the Netherlands. There is a red flag. They don't know we are doing this, because if they know, they will definitely cover the loopholes.
Johannes Chiminia shows us that a tax haven does not necessarily include a palm beach, by taking us to one of Kenya's 65 special economic zones.
Right now we are in Athi River, where the Athi River export processing zone is domiciled. It is like an enclosed, a bonded area where companies, manufacturers are domiciled, and they do their manufacturing inside, and all the products they manufacture are meant for export purposes. These are a formal way of tax avoidance. Here in Kenya, companies are given a 10-year tax break initially. Then after that 10 years, they are given, they are charged a corporate tax rate of 25%, which is lower than the general corporate tax rates on the market. And there also is no withholding tax which is charged.
So you could say that this is, in a way, a tax haven on a very small scale.
Yes, a government initiated tax haven.
Wouldn't you like a tax holiday yourself? Thousands are available, and they come in all shapes and sizes. In Africa, but also in your local business park. But do these promises of development and employment have any real effect?
You remember those? From VAT, from goods and services that are manufactured. Now we also get income from customs and excise. We are giving away.
At the University of Nairobi, we talked to Itia Waris, who has investigated the effects of these often secret tax arrangements for years.
basically these are zones where you will go, you will build your factory, and then for 10 years maybe the government will not collect tax from you. These exist pretty much in every country in Africa right now as we speak. And what we've discovered in all the countries is that when that 10-year period ends, they close up and they move. So that
what she's talking about, I don't understand.
She's talking about actually in a lot of African nations, but not only in Africa, also outside of Africa, they have these special economic zones. And the economic zones, if you open up shop in an economic zone, like what we saw in that economic zone in the video in Kenya, if you open up a factory there, then you don't have to pay income tax in Kenya for 10 years. After the period of 10 year ends, you need to pay 25% of income tax. So this is done in order to attract foreign direct investment, who can then open up a factory in Kenya, and they will need to hire local people in order to produce. But they don't have to pay income tax. So the benefits that flow to Kenya are just the tax that the local employees need to pay in forms of income tax. They don't get any income tax from the companies who employ them. Now what she's talking about now is, she says, well, okay, actually these tax breaks are intended to attract foreign direct investment, but all the benefits for the companies are not coming back to the country, because after 10 years these companies simply move to the next tax haven, or they sell their company to another, their factory to another factory, and they will get an additional 10 years tax break.
She's Islam?
Yes.
has happened. In the Kenyan EEZs, there are no companies that last longer than 10 years. And if they have, the ownership has changed. So when the ownership changes, then the tax holiday gets extended by an additional 10 years. When companies investing, mining companies are investing in a country, they're coming because that natural resource exists in that country. It's not because of the tax. They're coming. The minerals are not going to be able to move. They're not going to take a walk across the border because you raise up your tax. But for some reason, this concept has just not penetrated into developing country governments. They still think that they have to beg multinational corporations to come into the country and then beg them to set up. But what actually happens is they take the resources and then they go. This is crazy. The whole point of a tax holiday is that you get a break for 10 years while you set up your business, you crystallize it, then you start to show a profit. Then you're in the country and making profits and paying taxes. That was the point of giving you the 10-year startup. Not that you come in, invest, extract as much as you can and then leave the country. That's exploitation.